I think it's belated, somewhat half-hearted, and not dogged enough. It wasn't well thought out. But it's better than what had happened hitherto. A president must act presidentially and must be seen to not only be in office but also in power, to compel the Boko Haram people to smell the coffee, because it's been giving them ice cream hitherto. But Nigeria is now at the precipice of outright disaster, because these are insurrectionists who want to take over the Nigerian state, to overthrow the government of Goodluck Jonathan. They are acting in rebellion, in furtherance of their resolve to transform Nigeria into a government of Talibans.
Do you see this as political? Because there have been reactions that he's doing it as a political strategy because of the impending election 2015, especially because he's retaining the governors.
Well, everything is political in Nigeria, as in other countries. The fact that he left the political structure intact confirms your fears that he did not want to rock the boat. Then you have to ask, why then declare a state of emergency? Because a state of emergency means that extraordinary measures are warranted in order to save the ship of state from imminent disaster. And in law, we talk of necessary and proper, of things that are incidental to what the law provides for. Section 305 of the Nigerian Constitution talks about extraordinary measures. And if you look at states of emergency historically, right from Oliver Cromwell in the 17th century, right up to the IRA in Northern Ireland, and the fighters, the Islamic zealots in Chechnya, in Russia, the Tajil fighters, the Tamil fighters in Sri Lanka. You will notice that when you declare a state of emergency, you suspend democratic governance, human rights, and what have you. Besides suspension of democratic governance and human rights, is acceptable under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, what they call ordre public. If there is a clear and present danger to the state could suspend democratic norms of governance. That Jonathan did not announce a formal suspension of democratic rule as well as rights and impose formally what you call martial rule, tells me that he's trying to satisfy some constituencies. In other words, there are certain vested interests that whose toes he did not want to step on. Maybe you said because of 2015, the elections that are expected in 2015, where he has not come out to say whether he's going to run or not. But many people believe that if he said he was not going to run, then the political temperature in the country will have gone down straight. You know, like Machiavelli used to say, a ruler that wants to keep his kingdom must ensure that he's more feared than loved. So I think he decided now to formally remove the cover and bear his fans. But he didn't even bear it well, because I think he should have followed that declaration to its logical conclusion by suspending democratic norms and then putting in abeyance the civilian government in those places and declaring martial law. Now, yesterday we were informed that curfew had been imposed in one of the states. that my reaction immediately was, who imposed the curfew? Was it the governor or the military? It was the military. Because you see, in this situation, we have to go back to Aristotle's second law of logic. Two conflicting statements cannot be right and wrong at the same time. If one is right, the other must be wrong. So this unholy alliance between military rule and democracy will come to naught, because we know that the governors don't have authority or power, not over the police nor the army. So he should quit pretending and do what General Obasanjo did when he declared emergency in Plateau, and even when he did in Ekiti, when nothing near what we're experiencing now happened. You can't blow hot and cold. So I think it amounts to approbating and reprobating at the same time. I should go the whole hog, by suspending democratic rule in those states. Because really, quite frankly, what he has done is merely to deploy more troops. So more of the same. What else is new? We've always had the joint task force to contain the Boko Haram threat. So declaring emergency without now suspending ineffectual civilian administration amounts to going around in circles.
Which one is actually commendable? Is it constitutional to remove? But you cited Ode Public as one of your examples. Ode Public against Nigeria's federal constitution. Which one would have been more expedient for the president to abide by in a circumstance like this?
The concept of Ode Public, which I spoke about, invoking the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, recognizes the capacity of a state to declare emergencies, to suspend observance of human rights where and when the nation is in jeopardy. Nobody would doubt that there is a clear and present danger to Nigeria, and self-preservation is the first order of nature. As I told you, there was a time in England when a military situation, an emergency arose with Oliver Cromwell in the 17th century. Then you had, of course, the Irish Republican Army in Northern Ireland, internment of so many people, virtual suspension of democratic rule in Northern Ireland. Then the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka were nullified in terms of their threat to the unity of Sri Lanka. Then in Russia, in Chechnya, Dagestan, and other areas where Islamic fundamentalism is being confronted, you will notice that the Russian government has not pretended that it was going to fight them with kid gloves. It's only in Nigeria that you can find this rigmarole. I understand what Femi Falana and the Chair Sagi are saying in terms of the Section 305 and Section 11 of the Constitution and suspension, but a drastic situation warrants drastic remedies. Lawyers tend to disagree, even in respect of the definition of law, not to talk of application or interpretation of the Constitution. So, whilst I quite understand and appreciate their sentiments, it is my view that crass legalism should not be an impediment to any effort to keep Nigeria one. The Boko Haram people are insurrectionists. The President Jonathan called them insurgents. They are rebels. They want to overthrow the government of Nigeria. In fact, they had seized power in certain parts of the country and hoisted their own flags. They have committed terrible atrocities against the peace and security of the country. Only an unserious government, in the face of such clear and unmistakable threat to law and order, will continue to be treating them with kid gloves. So I'm in support of outright application of force to nullify and render nugatory the efforts by Boko Haram, after which we might now sit around the table to negotiate the terms of the peace. But to be confronting them at the same time talking of dialogue is a contradiction in terms, because as I said, the government of the day must make sure that Nigeria does not go under. So if we are worshiping due process and crass legalism, just the letters of the law, I will want to look at the spirit of the law, because if there's no Nigeria, the constitution will have been relevant. And so the first things first, make sure that insurrection is put down, just like Gawan did against Ojukwu in 1967. We have an incipient civil war in this country, and you can't pretend to the contrary. Even the international community will understand the necessity for containing rebellion or insurrection in those parts of the country, because foreign direct investment will leave Nigeria if the government of the day can maintain law and order, peace and security. The economy of the northern states is now in a shambles because of the insecurity and instability. The more atrocities committed against foreigners, not to talk of Nigerians, in those places, the more the thrust towards the disappearance of Nigeria from the political map of the world. So whilst I appreciate the efforts of Jonathan right now, it's not enough. It's even too little, too late. I think he has to go back to the drawing board, announce full onslaught, which he did. He said he was going to hunt them down. But you can't do that at the same time saying that the democratic structure should be left intact, because it's counterproductive. It's really dysfunctional. And he must offer no apologies to anyone for fighting to sustain Nigeria. That is my take. And like President Truman used to say, if you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. So since he's president, he should do the needful to ensure that Nigeria does not collapse on his head. You remember what a British Prime Minister once said, that he will not preside over the liquidation of Her Majesty's empire. The same thing with anybody exercising the office and functions of president and commander-in-chief in Nigeria. He should do what needs to be done, whatever needs to be done, regardless of whose ox is God. That Asari believes that he was merely exercising his right of freedom of expression. But I think what he suggests to me is that Asari Dokubo is not a Democrat. It's only anarchists, and I must say fascists, who don't recognize the right of the people to choose their leaders. He might think he's supporting his kinsman, but his statement really is a disservice to the aspirations or the ambitions of Jonathan. You see, nobody should appropriate the presidency of Nigeria to himself. It's not the birthright of anybody. The same thing with elements in the north who spoke about making Nigeria ungovernable for Jonathan. The presidency of Nigeria is not the birthright of anybody. It's the Nigerian electorate that should determine, through their votes, conducted in a free and fair, level playing field. Once the Nigerian people speak, nobody should threaten or hold the Nigerian people hostage by making such, in fact, outlandish statement. For me, it's a threat. It's a sword of Damocles that Asari wants to hang on the heads of the Nigerian people. And Nigeria should grow up and tell him that that message is misdirected, that we have gone beyond that.